This is Circa Ignem podcast episode number 023. Good evening, Rick.
Good evening.
Good evening, Manny.
Good evening.
It's been a while, boys.
It sure has.
It's been a minute. And we're back.
Just the three amigos tonight. No special guests.
No special guests. No special guests.
Unless one of your dogs runs out here.
They hopefully don't, because one of them wheezes like he's smoked for freaking 50 years.
Yeah, you guys will know if he comes out.
So Rick, you had a question about what we're going to talk about. So the title of this is a topic discussion. The title of this is Sine Propio. So what's your question, Rick?
What the no? What? Well, I think my question is naturally what most listeners will wonder when they hear that is what is that?
Okay, awesome. So it's Latin, and it's to live without anything of one's own. Mm-hmm. And the story behind it is that I actually heard it on a Matt Fradd episode. Father Malachi talked about Saint Francis and Assisi, I should say, Saint Francis of Assisi, and specifically how with the CFRs, the Franciscan Friars, the Renewal, they take this Sine Proprio like as in terms of their rule of life very seriously. So basically they don't really own anything. Yeah. Right. Even the clothes that are on their back are basically just to cover themselves, right? Because it's a necessary function. So like the concept of like ownership within the community is very unique and very radical for them. But it was interesting because I couldn't remember the Latin phrase that he had used, Sine Proprio, and so I reached out to John Girardi and I was like, hey, what's the actual legitimate translation of Sine Propio instead of Proprio? And in classic John Girardi fashion, he responds with, "Got to get that R in there, Eli. It's Proprio with a big capital R in the text." And then he shot me like a couple links and got me down the rabbit hole pretty quick. But that was so that's what it means to live without anything of one's own in Latin.
Yeah. So there's vow of poverty. And then there's this.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, that's that. So they take it to 11. Yeah. That's really like the idea is that the order is focused on serving the poor. Yeah. Which means that anything that's donated, anything that's given, is meant to be turned around at almost 100% and given back to whatever communities that they're in, right? Because they typically set up in communities that are very destitute and not, like great conditions. I think their first house was in Harlem, I believe so. And like the worst part of Harlem. But anyways. Yeah. As I was doing this deep dive, there was this cool line that I came across, and I actually forget, and I apologize where I came across it, but it's from Gaudium et Spes, and I think these tie in hand very, very closely in terms of that. And so here's the quote: "Man cannot fully find himself except through a sincere gift of himself." So that's the quote, and I would extend it more into not just a gift, but if we look at the cross, if we look at the crucifix, it's a complete outpouring of ourselves, right? So in some sense, not in some sense, it very closely ties into this concept of living without anything of one's own means that our constant reflection should be, what am I attached to? What are the things that are pulling, that I want to serve myself instead of those around me? And is it disordered, right? I guess that's always the good framework, is it disordered in terms of serving self? And most of the time, anything that's serving ourself is a disorder. Yeah. if not always. I could use an absolute in this case.
Probably.
Yeah. So that's that. So along this lines, have either of you seen My Octopus Teacher, or it's a Netflix documentary?
Oh, the story of a guy that pretty much visits an octopus every day. I haven't seen it. I just seen the trailer.
For a year. Dude, watch it. It's legit.
Okay.
It's cool.
So
it looks interesting.
Like animated, like a cartoon? Like it's a real
life.
The documentary.
The dude visits an octopus every day. For what purpose?
So he has, basically, it starts out, he gives his context. Spoiler alert for those that want to watch it. If you want to just skip through, this will probably be a couple minutes, figure out where it ends. But essentially, starts out that he's a very renowned videographer, and he spent most of his I think late teens, early 20s to his 40s, so 20 plus years doing legit videography for other documentaries, specifically in Africa, South Africa, I think a little bit in Amazon, but it's either following real remote tribes, following and doing work like that. He has basically a breakdown because of all the work that he was doing, and is I can't do any more videography. Doesn't give a ton of clarity as to why, but he grew up right on the coast of a specific smaller town in South Africa, and he goes there because it's kind of his safe spot. And he just starts swimming in the ocean because that's what he grew up doing, and then goes to a specific reef area in that off the coast there, and just starts doing kind of random dives, and just he's trying to I think kind of just find himself again, because he's just been so caught up in his career. And eventually he's playing with an underwater camera that he's been basically sponsored with, saying, hey, give us a take, give us your because you've done so much field work, give us your feedback on how this works. So he's just tinkering, doing what he knows, but not under the guise of work. It's just fun. And he captures this octopus doing this apparently it's super rare. He's one of two, I think, that's captured what this octopus does even to date. Essentially, super short. He captures this octopus grabbing a bunch of shells with all of its tentacles and balling up, so all of the shells create this shield around it. So it's just this ball. Literally, it just balls up right out in the open. It's not hiding in any cave or anything like that. It's out in the open, but you almost can't see it without actually. He caught it as it was doing it. So he approaches super close. He gets where we're at, 6 feet, 8 feet away from it, and then all of a sudden it just freaking takes off, drops all the shells, and just darts away.
Really? Wow.
So. That's what kicks off this whole I'm gonna keep visiting this thing. This he starts doing so he's very like you, Manny. He starts getting
obsessed.
Yes, obsessed. So he literally starts doing deep dive into what kind of octopus is this? Why would it live in this area specifically? He's doing full academic work on this specific type of octopus.
Yeah.
And then commits. He starts visiting this thing, skipping over a bunch of stuff. I did not know this, but essentially, again, spoiler alert, if you haven't already left, please skip over this. Octopi, apparently female, so he figures out that this is a female octopi, or octopus. When they mate, the female dies for the babies.
Oh.
It's a given. There isn't. That's the end. Once they actually lay eggs, and then they're fertilized, that's what happens. The female gives herself completely to her offspring.
I see the tie-in now.
Yeah. And so it's funny because I wasn't even thinking about the show when I was watching this. I was watching it with the kids, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there and I'm watching, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, oh, like, and Jamie's like, what? What are you doing? I'm like, where's my iPad? So anyways, yeah, that's this concept of, and I guess the tie-in too is that this exists in nature. Like, Rick, remember when we were chatting about, do you remember the pelican?
Yeah.
Yeah. Share that.
The pelican during Lent, during Easter.
Just the imagery. Yeah, like the imagery comes up in Lent specifically.
Yeah.
But this is it's a lesser known Catholic image for Christ.
Yeah, well, there was we were practicing the chant during Holy Week, and it said something about a pelican, and I was like, what? Like, like pelican, like
what chant was this?
I don't even remember. It was like Holy Thursday.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Like, I don't know. I think of pelicans as like a tropical creature. I don't know if they are or not, but I picture, more like,
there's pelicans off the Central Coast, bro.
Okay,
yeah, I guess you're right.
Aquatic.
Okay,
right?
Yeah,
I guess that's better than tropical, aquatic. And I'm like, I'm thinking like, okay, like Jerusalem though, like what the hell are pelicans doing out there? So it just kind of threw me off. But then John mentioned, and I don't remember the tie-in. You could probably finish the story off, but I don't remember.
Oh, okay. So the image, the very lesser known image of the pelican, is that when they're, again, it's similar to the octopus, not totally, in that when their offspring need to eat and they can't find anything to feed them, they'll strike their breast so that they bleed, so that their offspring can eat their own blood.
Wow.
So these two examples of like, we see this concept of to live without anything of one's own in nature, right? Like,
but not for the sake of just doing it.
Not just for the sake of doing it, for the other,
as a sacrifice.
Yes, as this offering or this sacrifice. And so that the idea of the pelican striking their breast, right, ties in with Christ. It's obvious, or at least it should be obvious in terms of the cross, right? The crucifix and the cross, in terms of that Christ came to give us literally his flesh. Yeah. That we would be saved. And so the pelican is this like weird, to your point, Rick, it's like, what? Like, okay, lion and lamb, I get that, shepherd, I get all the other imagery, but a pelican, like, and it'd be interesting, we should ask John next. I'm wondering if that wasn't a later image that came up, meaning like in like Crusades or something like that, where it became this like, and it'd be interesting to find out historically where that image, started to surface.
Yeah.
But so I think we've alluded to it, and the question is, Manny, why is this important? I'll throw it back to you. Why is this topic important?
Well, like you said, we see it in nature, and there's some examples of it. I think in some of the notes you sent, we see it in the early church, and there's popes and church fathers that talk about it. When I was going over the notes and thinking about this topic, I was thinking of Mary's yes and Joseph's yes.
Oh, nice.
That just kept coming to mind for some reason when I was looking into it. So, and then that made me think about, how this goes into our family vocations as fathers, mothers, and so on and so on. So I think, in that sense, to me, it struck as important. How do we practice this virtue or principle, whatever you call it, in our own vocations? Prime examples are Joseph and Mary, I think.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's a lot out there. We could find examples in them, in nature, in some of the orders like the Franciscans. Even when is in the gospel where the rich man, and Jesus tells them that it's easier for a poor person to get into heaven versus a rich man. It'd be easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle or something like that. Yep. So I think we see this theme come up over and over and over again. So it's obviously important. How do we practice it is the question.
Yeah. What about you, Rick? Why as we've just kind of started to kind of excavate the surface, why?
Well, I think as Americans, this is a very foreign concept. I mean, it's very like to live without nothing. But I think where we can kind of take this and run with it as far as like an American church is within our own domestic churches is just kind of being satisfied with what we have, and really striving to leave materialism behind. It's unrealistic to say, well, without one's own property, without anything in the world we live in today, we have to have something, we have to own something. But I also think of the image of the pelican basically offering up itself for its children, almost as of like what we have is enough, whether it's what we are or whether just making the most out of the things we have, the things that we're given, and really I think like seeing everything that we have as a gift. You know, I go to the store and I buy groceries with money I earned, but at the end of the day, God gave me that job. God gave me those finances to be able to do what I needed to do to provide for my family. I walked in yesterday from doing yard work outside, and my youngest, John Paul, had decided to take a box of Cheerios and spread them all over the house. Basically, like there were Cheerios everywhere.
Sorry,
and I was laughing, but that's I was so mad.
That's a classic.
Because I'm like, dude, I just spent half the day outside cleaning up messes that you make that you don't clean up, and he's four. But I'm just like, and he thought it was funny. Like he's like had a bowl of Cheerios and like throws it up in his face. No milk, of course, and like Cheerios everywhere. And I'm like, but like my bigger thing to him, where I was trying to make him understand, and again he's 4, but I'm like, this is sinful. Like God gave us this to nourish ourselves, and we're just wasting it and squandering it. And so the thought that came to my mind is just like, be appreciative of what you have and let it be enough. Of course, there's always going to be more that we want, sometimes more that we need, but most needs in our lives are wants.
Our wants, especially in America.
Yeah. And so just how do we make what we have enough? And it's a balance, because I think of like my mom is kind of a hoarder, and she has so much stuff. And I remember even like, she would save the bags of dog food after she fed all the food to the dogs, and she'd use the bags of dog food to cover her trees in the wintertime from the frost. Whoa. And I'm like, Mom, buy a freaking tarp. She's like, why would I go buy a tarp when I have this?
Wow.
And just that resourcefulness. And like, it would annoy me. And then I kind of realized one day, I'm like, my mom grew up poor in Mexico, where they had to learn to live this way.
Yep.
Like that's why she is kind of a hoarder, and why there is so much stuff in that house, because you didn't throw anything away growing up. It's everything had a purpose.
Well, and to your point, that I'm guessing, right, that the things that they did get, the reason why she's hoarding, would break down because of the use and the reuse and all that a lot more quickly, right? Versus here, because there's more, right? There's access to more, there's more income, there's a lot more stability economically. The things that you would acquire, right, probably are more durable. So the things that would normally have to be replaced rather quickly now aren't needed as often, right? So then that stockpile builds up. Yeah. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's something to be said, too, because I know I'm guilty of this, is like, we don't always appreciate or take care of the things that we have, because we know that we're well off enough that, hey, if it wears down or I would leave it out in the rain, like I can just buy another one. I can just buy another one. Yeah. So I don't know if that perfectly ties in, but when I'm hearing this topic that we're talking about, I'm like, okay, how can I apply it to my own life? And really what it comes down to is just like, make what you have enough. Yeah. Like be satisfied with what you have, and you make use of what you can.
Yeah. And so It's funny if we look at... Did you have something to say?
No, I was going to say, and tying into that, if it's not enough, trust in God that He'll provide the rest. If you turn down a certain position to not lose family time, or if you I don't know, we can think of a lot of different examples, but to trust that you're doing what God wants for your vocation and trusting Him that He'll provide the rest.
Yeah.
So
what you have is enough, and what's lacking, He'll fill in the holes.
And to this point, like, it's interesting that you brought that up. Well, both, like, so it's interesting. So I've caught myself in that same mode, Rick, of I'll just go buy it, if that breaks, or if that breaks down a little bit, or if it gets a little more ratty, I'll just whatever, Conversely, if I took better care of it, right, which means more discipline on my part, less laziness, it also exemplifies to my kids, hey, to your point earlier, right, this is a gift, right, like, and I think that's more like this concept that's been, and we'll get to it later on in the conversation, but like this concept of it doesn't look the same, right? So we mentioned CFRs earlier, but it doesn't look the same for like us that are married. But the principle is the same in that our desire, the desire should always be from the heart of understanding, Lord, what do you want me to do with what you've blessed me with? Right? It should be a returning of the gift. You've given this to me, trusting me to be a good steward of it. So help me be a better steward of it, because I'm just going to squander it, right? Like I'm not going to treat it the way that you are desiring me to treat it, whatever it is, or more importantly, how do I use this to then show my kids or those in my community, and not for me, but for God's glory, they live differently. To your point, right? In a society where it's very throwaway, where it's very like, oh, I can just go get a new T-shirt tomorrow, right? Or I can go get a new pair of shoes. It's no. I've noticed that Eli doesn't just go buy a brand new pair of shoes. He wears the you-know-what out of that pair of shoes until it's actually time for him to get a new set of shoes. Instead of, right, oh, they kind of look a little ratty, so we're just going to toss these ones in the closet. And that's actually another point that we should talk about. I saw a great quote on this. And then go get some new ones. And I don't turn around and take the ones that are perfectly good and go give them to someone that could use them, that absolutely does need them. So
true.
Very true. Was that in line with what you're thinking?
Oh, yeah. I was like, it wasn't leading to anything I was going to say. I just threw in my truth.
I think so. So one of the next section, so like the... kind of going to catechism here, right? Our whole call is to holiness, right? As Catholic Christians, that is like the underscoring, to know, love, and serve God. That's in the very first, I think it's in the first paragraph of the catechism, right? That's all of the Christian life, is to know, love, and serve God. Which also means that we need to look at Christ in the Gospels. How did he live? Rick, I'll pose that to you. Let's just reflect a little bit on, from memory in the Gospels, what can we glean from the way that he lived and exemplified what we're talking about?
Well, I think resourcefulness. I mean, there's a lot of what we would probably call poverty looking at it now, but did they feel like it was poverty? Probably not.
Probably not.
They had enough. They had what they needed, and they worked with their hands. You know, I mean, our Lord was a carpenter. You know, and he built stuff. We were just recently we watched The Passion of the Christ on Good Friday, and I thought it was beautiful, the scene where he's outside building a table. You know, and it's like those are the arts that are lost. You know, a lot. Now in our society, because we'll just go buy it. Oh, we need a table for the backyard, we'll just go buy it. We need a table for the kitchen, we'll just go buy it. So, yeah, I think a lot of, like I said, like what we would consider poverty, because we're so freaking spoiled.
Yeah.
You know? But it's like, no, they had enough and they had what they needed. And, you know, of course, our Lord also had the ability to multiply food when he needed to. But
well, there's a beautiful scene, a number of scenes in The Chosen that reflect this as well. Like, they do a really good job of presenting this concept of that Jesus, like, before he actually starts the official ministry, they're showing these like snippets of him interacting with children. And it's cool tie into like Matthew, where he's like, no, let the little ones come to me, right? Gospel of Matthew is what I'm referencing. And so they're the first ones before he started, you know, the wedding at Cana, right? That kicks off all like his whole official like public ministry. And he's got all these beautiful woodwork, but it's all necessary to what we're talking about. It's all things like he's got these cool like fish traps that are he's made out of a combination of reeds and like very, very intricately you know, chiseled out pieces of wood. And then he's got the only few things that he eventually builds are like these like little doll sets for the kids, because they keep visiting him, you know, and like, hey, who, like, what are you about? Why are you alone? Like they're asking just normal, like very direct kid questions, but he's just got all these cool things that, like, because he's Joseph's son, he knows, and he'll go to market. And he's getting what he needs, right? He's using the craft that he has to provide for himself, but it's not overabundant. That's the other cool part, is that it's the right amount of, this is what I need to get my daily bread.
You
know.
Not like when I'm working on something and I got to go down to Lowe's for a box of nails, and I leave there with a new saw and a new tape measure. To replace the one I already have, but this one's better.
That's still fine.
And you do husband math, like, if I do this job with this tool, I'll save this much money. So I pretty much got it for free. I'm getting paid to buy this tool.
I'm paying myself to buy this tool.
Well, if I buy this tool, she's going to be mad. But if I bring her flowers, and now I'm spending twice as much money. But what was the thought I had there?
That Jesus was humble and you're not.
Wow. Damn.
Sorry.
No, that's true. That wasn't the thought I had, but kind of, you pretty much encompassed it all. That's what I was going to say, because I was feeling kind of like, up until the point you mentioned the dolls that he was making, I was thinking like, man, he was making necessary stuff, like tables, chairs, things you need. I picked up woodworking, and I'm making signs and cornhole boards, and, you know, it's like not necessary stuff, but either way, interesting. I haven't watched too much of The Chosen. I know you talk about it a lot. I really should try to watch it more. Are they ever going to finish the story?
There's some sort of legal battle going on or something.
About what?
Is it really?
I don't know a lot of the details. I try not to get into it, even though the YouTube videos keep popping up, but I just rather not know and just wait for it to come out. But I think it has to do with... it used to be through Angel Studios, and then it turned into Bread and Loaf, I think, or whatever it's called.
Okay.
And then so they're having some sort of battle, legal dispute.
That sucks.
But what's his name, Dallas?
Yeah.
Dallas
Jenkins.
keeps saying, he keeps saying that it's going to get settled, it's going to come out, and it's going to be okay. It's just taking time.
Yeah.
So, but later on in the show, I like how they start doing things like the olive oil to pay for the ministry.
Yes.
There's different things, just going back to what you're saying.
Gospel, right? Like, where it's like, this isn't literally, it's not gospel truth, right? Yeah. But you're also like looking at it and you're like, oh, that's sense. That's reasonable, right? Like, that's not antithetical, to the gospel. It also ties in to like the anointing of his feet, right? Where she, we just passed it with Lent, where she dumps that whole, like that, like super high end oil. It would make sense that they invest in that, right? Because that's where that would come from, right? They wouldn't be able to get their hands on that within
Unless
reason.
It was a gift.
Unless it was a gift, sure, that could have been donated. Yeah. But anyways, there's a bunch of like interesting ways that they're tying in like symbolism in these like different things that aren't gospel. You know? So, I think so. We've talked, and not just the Gospels. One of the notes I have is the Gospels, but all of Scripture reveals this. Going off on a tangent here. I've been chewing on this concept of because I struggle very much with like trusting God, right? Lord, you're going to give me my daily bread. This actually ties in with this, right? Like what we're talking about. Yeah. And so the word trustworthy, right? I'm really zeroing in on, Lord, you are trustworthy, and I don't trust you enough. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. To truly, because he has, if I look in my own life, he has come through in times where it's radically not, like statistically radically not probable that should have happened, right? Yeah. And yet he has come through, right? Yeah. And yet when I look at Scripture, I haven't looked for him in there to prove and provide evidence of how trustworthy you have always been, right? So that the trust is like this idea of I want to believe that I trust him, but the reality is that my trust is so small in comparison to what he has already shown and what he wants me to have confidence and faith in. So part of that is looking at Scripture, but then not more importantly, just as importantly, is also looking at the saints and the martyrs that have come before us, right? Because they exemplify this deep, deep trust and deep faith in a God that never abandoned them, right? And in them striving to be holy, striving to be saints, it required them to, in the case of martyrs, to completely give of themselves, right? Again, modeling what Christ did and what Peter and the rest of the apostles did, but also sometimes not, right? Like many saints that didn't martyr themselves lived lives to the end where they gave completely of themselves and no one knew it. That was the beauty. No one knew that they were living the way that they were, anyways, thoughts. What are thoughts on that? Questions?
Well, I was thinking Mother Teresa until you said no one knew it. That was pretty famous.
That's that,
yeah. But she wasn't a martyr, right?
No. Was not.
Yeah. And she lived in that poverty amongst the poor and the most needy and gave her all, essentially. Yeah.
But is that a martyrdom in and of itself?
Oh, you're getting deep now.
You know? Well,
no, I mean, like the
I don't know, man. I mean, like if
to die to oneself is to die.
That's what I'm saying. Like if I'm faced with the choice of like, in my early years of like, hey, you're gonna die boiled in a vat of oil for our Lord, or you're gonna live a life of poverty and dying to yourself, and you're gonna live till you're like 80 or 90 years old. It's like, maybe boil me.
I'd like to
be over quicker.
Yeah. Turn me over.
Turn me over. I don't know.
I'm in agreement. I think there's argument to be made that red martyrdom at some level, again, there's arguments to be had on both sides, but red martyrdom is at some level a little bit easier because time, right? Yeah. Like white martyrdom, it requires a consistent plodding. And plotting meaning moving forward, taking steps, trying to trust, trying to completely have faith, trying to, again, pour out yourself in whatever God has called you, whatever life he has called you to, whatever vocation he's called you to. And in that, knowing full well, to your point, that am I going to do this for the next 40 years of my life? And you're not even going to give me an inclination in Mother Teresa's case? Like, I'm not going to really actually have any consolation this whole time. Yeah. Right? You know, again, that wasn't revealed until much later, but she exemplified this, like, yes, I'm in love with this person. And it's like, oh, but this person never gave you, or you felt like he never gave you very much in return. Yeah. Right? Like, that's.
Yeah. I think kind of one thing that a thought that came into my head right now is like kind of going back to the heart of like the whole, make what you have enough, or even just the simplicity of Sine Proprio. I remember in my like early 20s doing youth ministry. I never ended up giving this talk, but I had this idea in my head for giving a talk around the Our Father, and going into every part of the Our Father and talking, breaking it down into like just this epic, just, explaining away all the different parts of the Our Father in different ways. And for whatever reason, I got stuck on the give us this day our daily bread, because I tried to make it more than it was. And like, how many times do we do that as Christians? It's like we try to make things a bigger deal. And this is not a shot, but I feel like Protestants do it a lot. Where in my mind, I'm just kind of like, I was like, what's that? To me, it was symbolism. It had to be symbolism. I was like, what? Give us their daily bread. Like, what are he talking about? I couldn't fathom in my mind that it was a simple, I remember I even met with our priest at the time, because I was like, yeah, I had this idea. I was like, but I need you to explain this one to me, because I don't really know, like, what is, obviously, like, forgive us as we forgive those trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation, and there's all these different things. I was like, but what is give us their daily bread? Like, what is he talking about? What's the symbolism there? And he's like, there is no symbolism. That's just having trust that God is going to provide. Yeah. And I felt like such a dumbass. Like, I was just like, oh, But
let me ask you this though: was the priest framing it as making like talking down to you?
No.
Or was he just like in a compassionate, charitable way saying, no, it's as simple as he does just want to feed you?
Yeah. No, that's kind of what it was. Yeah. And I was just like, dude, I've been pondering this for months, trying to figure out like where's the epicness and all. The deeper meaning of give us their daily bread. What does that even mean? And it literally was as simple as let God provide. Yeah. Trust in Him. I was like early 20s. Man, it was after we were confirmed.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I think that's an easier concept to grasp once you're ahead of a household.
Yeah, and definitely.
You're the one providing, and then you've had some times where like it wasn't easy to provide. Yeah. You really hold on to that line.
Totally.
But I think as a young adult, I know for sure I was not understanding that at the time. Mm-hmm. I just knew there was dinner when I got home with my parents.
Totally.
Yeah, but just that trust that God will provide. Yeah, you're right. Like at a young age, you don't really realize it. You don't really see it. So I remember going to when we were going to the Steubenville conferences, and I remember when Bob Shrimp would host them, and he would always give testimonies and tell different stories. And I remember him telling a story about him and his wife were like really struggling financially, and they just didn't know. Basically, they were sitting at the table with the mail with like
bills,
3 bills in front of them, deciding which 2 of the 3 they were going to be able to pay because they couldn't pay all 3. Yeah. And then one of the letters that was hiding in there, like, opened it up, and it was like this random check that somebody had sent them out of it. And like, again, God will provide. And I remember hearing that, thinking like, oh, that's a cool story, like, feel good, whatever. And then like 4 years ago, my wife and I were in the same situation, and we're sitting there like struggling because she'd taken time off for maternity leave, and I'd taken time off because I had surgery, and we were struggling, and we were in the same situation. It's eerie how similar it was. And we're sitting there trying to decide which bill we're going to pay because there's no way we can pay all of it. And I remember we were like $1,800 short, and I opened up a letter, and it was we'd overpaid on our escrow, and it was a check from our mortgage for the exact amount that we were short. Like, and I was just like, there's no way this is happening. Praise it was Jesus. The exact same story that I heard at that Steubenville conference, but again, just that trust of just like God will provide. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think it's so hardwired in us in a negative way. I'm not saying this in a like the law that's written on our heart, right? It's the concupiscence in us to be like, okay, yeah, you said you'd take care of me, but I got to do something, right? And He does. He calls us to act, right? But there should, again, going back to children, there really is this simplicity in this, to live without anything of one's own. Like my own kids, to what you just mentioned, Manny, like they don't have a concept of what it takes for the house, to run and do and manage all the things going in and out of this place. And they shouldn't. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like they really shouldn't. There should be an innocence, and not that we should be sticking our heads in the sand as adults, but conversely, there's something to be said about really, again, kind of allowing God to reshape our vision on this in terms of, Lord, help me to approach you as a child, right? Like in terms of trusting that, you know what? You're going to provide. You're going to come through. And often I think the big thing for me is again, going back to the trust, it's like we don't recognize that it's likely and most of the time, if not always, not going to look like what we have in mind.
Yeah.
Which is really the bigger problem, because it's us being God and going, I want it to look this way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's going, but I'm not part of that.
No. Yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah, that's cute. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to let you keep digging that grave, Eli.
I think for me, it's more of like, I want to know how.
Yes.
Okay, I trust you're going to provide, but come on, how are we going to provide that?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Give me the deets.
Yeah. All right, so what do we do next? You just keep doing what I want you to do, Manny, and I'll take care of the rest. But I want to know.
Yeah. No, it's true, but I mean, because like back in that moment for me, it was like, it's like God's like, I'm gonna break you down just enough to where you're gonna realize how much you need me, and that was a result, like that moment where we were struggling at that point. It was like that was a result of our yes to life, to children, and because it ain't cheap.
Nope.
And it's like, like like we would have never found ourselves in that situation if we were both like career people without any kids.
Yeah, no. We're not going to participate in this.
Yeah, like, oh no, we're financially well off. Like I work, my wife works, we don't have kids. Like we travel, we do all this and that. Like you're never going to face yourself in a situation like that. But it's a result of a yes to life, of just like, no, God, like this is what you want from us. Like we're going to trust. And he's been very generous, and but even still with what we have, we fall into these, like we bought our house in 2018, and it's a 3-bedroom house, and that was 3 children ago, and now it's just like, okay, how many kids can we stack per room? And I've fallen into like, man, we've outgrown this house. Like this sucks. Like
for sure.
Like we need a bigger house, and then I'm just like, dude, at least you have a house. And I mean, you grew up like that. You know how many people to a room,
and it's what you said. We had at one point we had four of us, boys stacked up, 2 bunk beds, in a room. And mind you, now looking back, those rooms. I mean, you guys have been out there. Mm-hmm. Those rooms aren't small. Yeah. Right. And I didn't think twice about it. Yeah. That's the beauty of, like, I think going back to this, like, I don't want to sound like I'm stuck in, like, gotta go back to, like, childhood. That's not what I'm saying. I think, like, my thought process is we need to allow God to restore our true identity, right? The Gaudeum et Spes, right? Like, God wants us and has given us such a mission, a unique mission, and has hardwired us and softwired us in all these capacities, but we just need to continue to like lean into him and engage him and allow him to transform us, right? And the only way that identity is revealed is that Gaudeum et Spes, like line. Basically, it's JP2. Before he was like Pope. Yeah. Talking through this idea of that, like, we really don't actually know who we are until we offer it. And we offer this I don't know what you're going to do with this. Yeah. And to like the Bob Shrimp, to your story, Rick, like a beautiful story. Manny, I know you've got something deep in the story in terms of, like, when we are literally at that point, and I can attest in my own, and Jamie and I's, to your point, like, especially marriage, and I think it's a beautiful testament to marriage of, like, what it does in terms of, like, this idea of you reach these points where you're like, I don't have anything else. And God goes, hold my beer.
No, you know,
yeah. And it's beautiful, but how much more? And I'm not saying this in a like regret standpoint, but how much more if I'm willing to risk, right? Like there's this concept of like, oh, that's risky if I trust you, God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's risky if I just say I'm going to trust you. But look at like Mother Angelica starting freaking EWTN. She didn't know where any of that was coming day to day.
Yeah.
And yet she's just like, he will provide. Mm-hmm. He will provide. He will provide. He will provide. And people are like, you are cuckoo. Like this makes no sense. And guess what? God every time was hold my beer.
Yep.
Hold my beer, hold my beer, hold my beer, because she is willing to risk on me. You know what I'm saying? She's willing to, like, again, pour out all that she has, which is maybe nothing, but guess what? She's not shy to go to the people around her and go, hey, can you help me out with this? Hey, can you help me? Because that's all she had. Mm-hmm. This is all I got. I got a tongue and the ability to talk to people, and hopefully someone softens and says, yeah, I can help you out, or I can connect you with someone that can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think sometimes a perspective change can help too. Like right now we're talking about how we can apply this as families, men's a family. And going back to the story of the widow who gave only what she had?
Yeah.
It's
the two, I think it was, I forget what.
Coins.
It was two
coins versus
2 coins.
What everybody else
Shekels,
was giving.
I think, yeah.
So, I mean, how much less of their own self or their own property or anything is like a single mom giving versus like us, heads of families giving. And for us, it seems hard, but if we compare, perspective shift, our struggle to her struggle,
it's so much smaller.
Yeah.
To your point, it's like that. Like that
and God
offering.
Values it more.
Yes, that offering was you trust me, right? Yeah. Like that's a literal physical trust of this is what you called me to do, and I will be faithful.
Yeah, because
I know you will be more abundantly faithful in return, right? Yeah.
So I think thinking of things like that, different perspectives of. We're not the center of the universe. We don't have. There's always someone that has it harder. That type of thing.
That's good. I like that. Yeah.
I think those are good things to contemplate on and kind of chew on. There you go.
Yeah.
When thinking about this kind of making these kind of choices in our own lives.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna take a break. When we get back, we'll kick off with vocations. Cool.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Hey guys, Eli here from Circa Ignem. Hope you're enjoying this week's guest so far. Just want to take a quick second to invite you to join our online community on all your social media platforms. We'll be sharing wholesome, Christ-centered content, and you can always stay up to date on the latest news and episodes. Listen, like, comment, subscribe, and share with all your friends. Thank you. And we're back. Got our pipes refilled. Around midnight. Not literally, but my pipe tobacco is around midnight. All right, vocations. We must embrace more that our lives are meant to be poured out completely as Christ poured himself out on the cross for us. So what does that look like in marriage? If we take this back to Sine Proprio, right? Living without anything of one's own. What does that look like? Kick us off, Manny.
Well, I think that means you say goodbye to the man cave. No.
Throw out the Xbox.
Speaking of which, off mic, I got an idea for you guys. But anyways.
You're going to sleep in floral blankets.
Immortalize it. Say it right now. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, fine.
No, I'm just kidding. No,
I've had this idea.
Oh, you're going for it.
I am going to go for it. Manny, I do want to hear what you have to say. I have this idea of this could be incorporated with the podcast of figuring out a cool space to rent, but that is meant as like, and I mean this in the holiest of ways, like a gentleman's hangout spot.
Gentleman's lounge.
Like a lounge. Anyways, we'll talk off mic a little more on that. I'm thinking Old Town Clovis. We'll just put it that way.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anyways, okay, Manny.
Now the wives are going to hear this, and it's going to be automatically shut down.
Yeah. Oh, I floated it out right away to Jamie, and she was just like, "So you mean I'm never going to see you?" It's like,
someone has to run it.
that escalated quickly.
We'll call it Saint Raphael's lair.
Oh, the dungeon's lair. Saint
George's lair.
Oh yeah, no, I'm thinking of Saint George. Yeah, you're right. So I think that kind of ties in perfectly to the question.
Yeah,
is there's going to be a lot of what's the right word here? Where you meet in the middle. Yeah. What's that called? Compromise in marriage to your worldly desires.
Yeah.
Because you have responsibilities. You have responsibility to your wife. When you have kids, you have responsibilities to them, and it's not all about you. So you have to give of yourself and of your worldly desires to fulfill those responsibilities properly, I think.
Yeah.
Even if you have the means to fulfill both, I think it's gonna affect at some point your ability to fulfill one or the other. So yeah, to carry out that role, and I think I go back to St. Joseph again, in his yes to Mary, his yes to Jesus, his yes to God, and proposing that he take Mary and Jesus into his home and raise them and protect them and give them everything that they need until Jesus is ready for his ministry. Yeah, I mean, you got to give everything of yourself to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
So I think as fathers and husbands, mimicking that example of St. Joseph is, I think it's a good example to follow.
I think the obvious thought in that is like for a lot of men are thinking like, well, like I would have to give up. I mean, I jokingly mentioned, but like I would have to give up the Xbox, and I would have to give up like the country club membership, and all the different things that we would like if I was single, making the amount of money I make now, how much more nicer things I'd have the lifted truck, and and like that's the obvious thing you think of, but I think like I'll be just transparent and honest here. Like one of the things that I kind of struggle with a lot, that I have to constantly ground myself back and think, okay, dude, like calm down. It's not even materialistic. It's more of just like, I think you and I have had this conversation where you think the same. It's like I struggle a lot with like the like things not being organized the way I want them organized, the house not being clean the way I think it should be,
Totally.
Where I'm constantly like all come home and like the family's gone doing, I'd like taking the kids to catechism or whatever, and I'm just like,
what happened?
These dishes are piled up. Yeah. The backyard looks like a shit show. Like the house is a disaster, and I constantly fall into this like, is it so hard to just clean up?
Yeah.
After oneself, with like the kids, and even when we get married too, even like, I'm not saying my wife is a dirty person, but like their standard is never what our standard is. I'm sure I do things that she piss her off. Yep. I leave the toilet seat up and she leaves her makeup all over the sink or whatever. But that thought of constantly just like, man, if I was a bachelor, like my place would be immaculate, or it would at least be like how I would want it to be. Right. You know what I mean? And I just have to like just constantly be like, dude, you're being ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like it's like, would you give up the joy of like the family life and all the joy that your kids and the family brings you, and just the fulfillment of that, so the house could be a little cleaner?
Yeah.
Like that's what I think of. Like
a little bit to piggyback on what you're saying there. Well, the opposite of it really is, I think, is what this society and this culture is pushing. When men have those kinds of feelings, is like, those feelings are valid. It's okay to feel that way. To a degree, yes, but not to the point to where you're making these changes in your family life to accommodate those feelings.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys agree with that.
No, yeah, but it's materialism in and of itself, because it's like I'm focused on the material things. It's not. I might not be thinking like, oh, I'd have all these cool toys and like a nice truck and all these different things. It's like it's still materialistic and like, okay, what am I focused on? Like my house and things being organized, and it's like, would you give up the joy of children and the fulfillment of marriage for the sake of like the house being neat and organized? And really, for what? Like, so you give off the appearance that you have it all put together.
That is at the core of it. Right?
Yeah,
it's a masking of truly what's going. Like, I think for me, and not that this is always the case, but like most when I'm confronted with the mess. Mm-hmm. It's a direct confrontation of what's going on in my heart.
Yeah.
And what's going on in my heart is that mess I can control. This only he can control.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And for me, that's the more this element of letting go of it.
Yeah.
Right? And really like to exactly what you've been talking about, like, if we're open to life, if we're living as much as we can, trusting and being faithful in what the church teaches, and ultimately not just what the church teaches for our Protestant brothers and sisters, but what Christ teaches in Scripture and in the gospel, the Word, it's exactly what we're talking about. It's that I signed up for the mess.
Yeah. I
didn't know that I signed up for it, but I signed up for it. And guess what? Like, at some level, and we can go too far that way, at some level, the kids also need to understand and be emulated the idea of, we take back to what you already brought up, Rick, right? And Manny, I know you operate the same way. It's like, well, no, we should have an organized home. Yeah. Things should be orderly and have their place, right? But if it's also the way that we do it. If I'm pissed off cleaning up, then my kids get a totally bastardized and not a good reflection of the father who rejoices in the fact that, I think I brought this up in terms of like, prayer used to be where Bear, the 4-year-old, I'd be like, sit there, listen, do this, right? And now it's transformed into, no, you're not old enough quite yet to kind of get what's going on, but just stay around, dude. Just be around this prayer, because eventually you're going to pick up on the body language and what we do, how things shift when we move to prayer. And guess what? It was a direct reflection of watching him and me watching him, and I'm looking at him going, oh, that's me to God the Father. I'm not paying attention to Jack Diddley when he's trying to freaking tell me, hey, dude, you got to figure this out. And not in a bad way, in a loving, compassionate, like, beautiful, like, perfect father that he is. He's trying to say this stuff, and I'm like, for the listener, I'm looking all around, distracted. Oh, let's go shoot bows.
Squirrel.
Oh, let's go smoke some pipe. Oh, let's go freaking paint the house. Oh, let's do all these other things, which are fine and good in and of themselves, but they really, you can allow those things to be a distraction to what he is calling you to do, which is to be one with him. Right? Sorry, that was long-winded. So to what both of you have alluded to, marriage is for sure compromise, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that Manny, you pointed to it, this idea, especially in our culture today, of like, well, no, you should speak your truth, right? Is bullshit.
Very much so.
In terms of that, again, going back to Gaudium et Spes, the more that we suffer in a loving and joyful way, embracing that, not the suffering that we can't control, right, that's allowed or put into our lives, but the suffering that we can, right, to the, Rick, to your point, to the, oh man, this is a mess, you know, the more that I can step into that and be joyful in it and go, this is an opportunity for me to rejoice that I have the opportunity to clean up after the people that I love, instead of, well, if they weren't around, then I wouldn't have to do this.
Yeah.
Right? Then it reveals to what you were like kind of getting to is it reveals how much more I need to be molded into a better version of myself, right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of suffering, the complete outpouring, this to live without anything of one's own. When we suffer, especially choosing to suffer, it means that it reveals character. It means that it reveals I am meant for greatness. Mm-hmm. I choose greatness. I don't choose to continue to resort back to what Eli's desire is and what is Eli's version of organization and Eli's version of this domestic church should look like. It's more reflective of how does the Father want this to be reflected, because my children need to see love, bottom line, right? Of anything that they should see throughout their whole life, it should be love. And again, that has different forms, but ultimately it needs to be a joyful, compassionate, tender love over everything else.
Yeah.
You know.
Or hear me out.
Go for it. Yeah.
Sticking to Sine Propio.
Yeah. Don't forget the R. Don't forget the
R. If you have a mess, maybe you have too many things.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, that too.
That's awesome. Yes.
Maybe you buy your kid too many toys.
Yeah.
Maybe you have too many pipes.
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
No, that can't be it.
Never mind. You're right. You were right, Eli.
No, that's beautiful though, Manny. Like, that's at the heart of like the materialism, right? Mm-hmm. Like we look at others. I'll say this for myself. We look at others. Like I look at my garage and I go, yeah, you know, I'm not a hoarder, right? And we look at others, like back to your mom point, Rick, like, but like I grew up pretty simply. And right when you said that, Rick, it was like this interesting strike chord of like, oh, is the things that I hold on to a reflection of I didn't have those things growing up, so I got to hold on to these things because I don't know when I'm going to get them again, right? Yeah. If I give them away, am I going to get them again? It's like, but Eli, you haven't touched that thing in freaking 2 years.
Yeah.
Do you actually need it to sit there and collect dust? Or could someone that actually loves what they do with something like that use it for the intention and purpose that it was meant for?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, that's a good point, Manny.
It was half joke and half serious.
No, but that's comedy. it's truth in a funny, you know, most of the time.
Yeah.
Not always, most of the time.
Yeah.
It can be a good vehicle for the truth to come in.
So obviously we don't have a priest here, but what does that look like from our collective mind perspective, our hive mind look at the priesthood? What does that look like?
I mean, they give their lives to God. Different orders practice it in different spiritualities or rules of... What was it? Rule of what? Rule of life?
Rule of life, yeah.
Rules of lives. Like the Franciscans are hardcore.
Mm-hmm. Benedictines are hardcore.
Are hardcore.
There are plenty. Those are just to name a few. There are many, many.
But even the ones that aren't that hardcore, like they're still giving their life to God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easier to see it with the orders that take a vow of poverty, but I mean they all, in their own way, all take a vow of poverty of sorts, or you know, have that commitment to. I mean, there's a lot of very capable, brilliant men out there who, in the priesthood, who could have been so much more in the eyes of the world. Yeah. Our own pastor, Father Michael, is brilliant. You know, could he have been, you know, a business mind somewhere? Totally. You know, making so much money. I mean, his dad and brother are CPAs. You know, it's like.
Well, but even like to your point, even the way, like we're privy. Like we walk into kind of the back area of the office, and some of the things that are up on the whiteboard, like. He's a leader.
Yeah.
He's not a manager. You know what I'm saying? Like, he takes the inspiration part of being the head of his parish very seriously, you know.
And so many more, you know, that you know, they gave all of that up because God called them to something else.
Like Father Jacob, whom we had on here recently, he's a brilliant mathematical mind.
Absolutely, yeah.
And again, it's not, I mean, and I don't know if I've talked about this on the show. I know I've talked to you guys about it, but like, the people don't realize that they answered a call. It wasn't, oh, I wanted to be a priest. Maybe for some it is, but like Father Jacobs told the story of, like, people come up to him, it's like, so why did you want to be a priest? And he's like, who said I wanted to be a priest? Yeah. You know, that's what I was called to do. Doesn't mean that's what I wanted to do. You know, so that's that in and of itself is a denial of oneself, what's the translation?
Sine Propio.
What's the translation?
To live without anything of one's own.
Yeah, I mean, that's not, you know, literally what's going on with these diocesan priests. But a man who is faithful to the vocation of being ordained and consecrated hands, they've given up a lot for the greater good, for the good of the church.
I think there's something I'd need to do more research, so I'll see if I can find it and post it on the show notes, or just do it post. But I think one of the saints mentioned that the offering that a priest makes in the Mass takes a little bit of him every time. Right?
That's interesting.
And so at some level, not only is Christ offering himself to us through body, blood, soul, and divinity, bread and wine, but literally, physically, the priest is outpouring himself, right? In persona Christi, we know that, but literally, he's, you know, similar to our marriage, right? Our bedchamber, not at some level, we literally are giving ourselves to our spouses, right?
And vice versa.
Yeah, and vice versa. And it's beautiful. And so why would that not exist for the priest in the sacrifice of the Mass?
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, and it, like, back to our that earlier comment about, like, white martyrdom, right? Like, over time, that offering of self, you know, can seem, is this really doing anything, right? But again, that's the call to the priest. It's like, trust me, trust that I am moving what needs to be moved, and I am God, you know.
He is God.
Yeah.
And he's a funny guy.
Oh, man. All right. In the religious sense, so like brothers and sisters, consecrated life. There we go. That's what I was thinking of. How does that look? So this would be order, right? In terms of, you know, because that doesn't happen at the diocesan level.
Yeah. I think a lot of the same. There's not a visible, almost tangible offering like you can visibly see with a priest in their priestly vocation and in their public life, but with orders, with nuns, with brothers, their life's devoted to prayer, and that's their offering.
Yeah.
They've given up the pleasures of the world, the pleasures of the flesh, the material things, for a life of penance and prayer and contemplation, and serving the church in that way.
Yeah, a very hidden life. And to what we're talking about, like a life that many of these people so gifted could quote unquote contribute, to the greater world in variety of capacities, and yet they turn to that knowing, I think to your comment about Rick about Father Jacob, it's like, no, God called me to this. Mm-hmm. Why would I say no? Yeah. And not even necessarily why would I say no. This is what I should be doing.
Yeah. There was a sister I saw explaining the difference. I can't remember all the details here, but it came down to some of them go out on mission, mm-hmm. and some of them dedicate their lives to prayer. And mm-hmm. they're praying for the world, for everybody, for this or that or whatever. So I think those are two pretty evident ways where we can see this play out is the ones who go out in mission are giving their life and their time and mm-hmm. to go out and do those missions that they're doing, wherever they're going, whatever they're doing. Mm-hmm. And the ones that are giving their life in prayer and reclusion or seclusion?
Seclusion or recluse.
I think recluse is the wrong word.
Seclusion, yeah. I think that would be the proper one.
Yeah, so giving their life in seclusion and prayer and the things that we don't see that they do for us day in and day out, the prayers, the time that they put in doing that. I mean, that's a sacrifice that they're...
The quiet, hidden work, I'd say.
There you go.
The stuff that doesn't get recognized, right? That grates, especially on certain personalities, of like... No, I want to be recognized and acknowledged for this, but they're drawn into that for whatever reason, right? Like
one way to think about it is, who knows how many of their prayers have been answered that have affected you personally?
Goodness. Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, we won't know, but
yeah.
But that's one thing to think on, to contemplate on is that work that they're doing is, we don't see the results, but they're there. And
one of the cool things, my sister's close with some of the Norbertines down south, and then it ties in with the Norsean monks, right? So chant, right? Their whole mission essentially is 8 hours of sung prayer. Like when you think of that, like that's their job, mm-hmm. right? That's a full-time job, 8 hours of praying for the church, right? And I don't know if the Norbertines fall in the same category of time, but it's one of those things where, like, when my sister and I were chatting about this over, I think it was between Holy Saturday and Easter Sunday, it was like I was reflecting on this, and there has to come a point, for everyone in that vocation where they're like, is this even worth it? You know what I'm saying? Because you might be the most gifted singer, the most gifted, have all this talent in that arena, and yet the questions have to arise of just like, what is this all for? You know what I'm saying? I'm showing up 8 hours, and can we perfect this even more? Right? This specific chant that we've done so many times, and guess what? By and large, probably if they stick it out, there is this element of, not perfect, and I need this, this is perfecting me way more than if I chose something else to do, Yeah. Anything else on those respective?
No, I don't think so.
All right, we're gonna jump into some examples of some saints. And do you guys have any that came to mind as you were looking over this?
No.
Okay. Maybe.
Besides St. Francis and Mary and Joseph, no.
Yeah. So the first one that came to mind from this concept of living without anything of one's own was Isaac Jogues, St. Isaac Jogues, French priest, Jesuit. I'm going to hold back my tongue on what should follow after that. I'll just say this. This was when Jesuits were legit.
You said too much, Eli. You said too much. Believe it or not.
I kid. There are great, many beautiful Jesuits out there that are doing great work. The ones that get the highlight are the ones that aren't. I'll just put that, and that's sad. Anyways, so he's a missionary that's commissioned to go to Quebec at the time, which was not. It was frontier, essentially. It was not. It was French province, right? Like it was their. Like it was. What's it called? Their colonies existed within, Canada, or what would become Canada. Specifically, he was sent to basically preach to the Mohawks and to the, I believe it was the Iroquois nations. And at one point, he's captured by Mohawks, and the Mohawks were let's just put it this way, a very savvy group of people in terms of Native American tribes, or Native North American tribes, I should say, at that point. And they knew that priests had a special place within culture of those that were coming over from Europe. And so they figured out that if they chewed on thumbs and the first finger, which would be the anointed fingers of a priest, that it would nullify, at that point in time, their ability to consecrate. So they used this as a consistent practice, and it had already existed prior, so I don't want to make it seem like it was something new that came online, but their way of basically desecrating or causing sacrilege was to chew on, the women of the tribe would chew on the thumbs and the forefingers, specifically of religious priests.
Wow.
At one point, his thumb is completely bitten off, kicked and stabbed with sticks, rocks, so he's captured at this point, and they'd have hot coals thrown on them. All the things he went through in this initial, there's a second story to this, or second phase of this story. In this initial one, by all rights, let's just put it this way, he should have just been able to, he got away. He actually broke away initially, and then realized, I'm leaving the people I came with. So the whole caravan pilgrim group that he was with, he was about to just run away from them, and said, no, Lord, you came that I might protect them. I'm their shepherd. So he was running away, and then turns himself back into the Mohawks, because he's like, I'm not going to abandon the people that I'm with, right? So not the Mohawks, but the people that he's with. Goes back. They do all this to him. Then he escapes with the few that do survive over the many months that they're held captive. Escapes, goes back to France. He's given the pass, so to speak. He's given the order, basically says, Isaac, you've done God's work. You can stay here. You can do academic work. You can do all this stuff. Even from the Pope, he's gotten the blessing because of how his fingers were damaged. The Pope said, no, you can continue to practice, and offer Mass publicly, not just privately. This was out of your control, right? He then hears that they need an ambassador back to the same area and basically the same coalition, or I forget what the name is, but basically it's a coalition of Mohawk and Iroquois. And he basically goes, no, that's me. You need to send me, because I know at this point he had kind of figured out a little bit of their language, but he's like, but that's my mission. That's why I signed up for this. So again, this idea of that he wasn't going to back away from the reality of God's called me to give of myself completely. I didn't earn anything to what we're talking about. This isn't an earning of, okay, cool, I can get out to pasture and live my, the rest of my days. It's like, no, I signed up for this. So he goes back and ends up getting tomahawked. Fairly quickly, actually. He gets captured and then tomahawked. There's a little bit of dialogue. They sent some emissaries trying to negotiate his, release and all that, and then, the Mohawks were basically just trying to get as much money out of the situation or trade, value out of it. So that's one example. This is a cool one. I was doing some research on Saint Louis Martin. He's the father of Saint Therese of Lisieux. So he originally desired to be a monk and was kicked out because he couldn't learn Latin. At this point, the church historically was you had to have extreme fluency in Latin for obvious reasons in terms of the Mass, but also in terms of being able to promote the faith and to write in Latin. So he couldn't pick it up in the time, that was allotted for him to actually move on and progress, and so he was kicked out. He married Zélie, who is also a saint, and they were celibate until their spiritual director encouraged them to consummate their marriage. So they both, and I think she was kicked out as well. I forget for what reason. She actually wanted to be a nun. So interesting that they were both felt called to these vocations of, consecrated life or holy orders, respectively, and ultimately got kicked out, respectively, and then were united through spiritual director. They're told, no, you're not supposed to be married without at least trying to conceive children. That's the whole point, right? So they end up having, let's see here, 6 children total, 4 of whom survived were all girls. Obviously, one of them being Saint Therese of Lisieux. He was an accomplished watchmaker and jeweler, but I'm getting to the real. He had a deep love for nature. But this is the kicker here. That concept of living the monastic life, he actually implemented in their home, in the domestic church. So in their attic, he set up this room where the kids were totally allowed to come into, but there was no talking. It was only for prayer and quiet contemplation and meditation. Yeah. So I thought this was cool in terms of what we're talking about. He brought this idea of just because we think that this lifestyle is for them, meaning monks and for orders, doesn't mean that we can't somehow incorporate that same idea. Yeah. So he's practicing this idea, which then you see has drastic effect on all the daughters because they all end up becoming religious. And in some sense, it's a reflection also of his deep faith, his deep love for the Lord, and ultimately reflecting this idea of no, everything we have, everything that we do is for Him. Again, he could have probably gone and done many great things as a watchmaker jeweler, but knew this time and place, this is what I'm called to do, to serve my family in this capacity. Yeah. So
the story before this one reminded me of a priest, and I don't know if I heard the story here on this podcast or somewhere else, but something about an island, and I'm not going to have a lot of details, but something about an island where people had a disease that was very contagious, and whenever they got that disease, they got sent to that island.
Father Molokai.
Where he hears their confessions, ends up contracting it, and ends up deciding to stay there?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, same story.
Yeah. Hawaii.
Oh, yeah, okay, I figured it was something.
Yeah, it's Hawaii, and that's a great story. So I forget what order, but he's serving the I don't know if it was the state. No, it wouldn't have been the state at that point, but it was the group of islands of Hawaii at that point. And the way that they would handle essentially leprosy was they were dropped off at a remote island off of all the other islands and left to just fend for themselves. Weren't brought food, basically they were just left to fend for themselves. And he, because I forget what the charisms and what order, gosh dang many, but basically what was happening on this island, he's like, this is we're supposed to do this, so why are we ignoring the reality of what's going on this island? And it started out with they would do confessions on a boat off the shore. Yeah. Right. So the anyone that could swim out and keep distance from the boat. And then he's sitting there going, no, this isn't enough.
You had to yell out your confession?
Yeah, this isn't enough. So then he was just, he resigned himself. He's like, I know. Even his superior was like, you know that once you go on that island, you can't come off. Because at that point, leprosy hadn't figured out how to manage it with medicine. And so he was like, yep, I know. So again, like this, like he's not living with any concern for himself. He knows this is what I'm called to do, and if I die because of leprosy, so be it. But at least I know that they have Christ. Mm-hmm. At least I know that they have the Mass, access to Mass and confession, right? Yeah. Just a beautiful reflection of courage, right? Like that's also some, like, this life. This is, and I mean this in the classical sense, not in our culture or current culture, like, but the term lifestyle, right? Like, living as a Catholic, it is a lifestyle, right? Because really, everything we do is oriented around the liturgy, right? Everything our whole life. I heard this Eucharistic prayer. Not in the Mass, but it's because of the year of the Eucharist. The beautiful line at Holy Family in Visalia that they say before Mass, and it's may my life incorporate something to the effect of, may my life reflect the prayer of the liturgy or the liturgical life of the Church. Right? So it's this idea of that the more that we pour out ourselves in what the Church has established, what Christ has established as the liturgy of the Church, then in so doing, our life becomes a whole reflection, right? So the quick thought is morning, noon, and night. Those of us that would be laity a long time ago would pray the Angelus, right? And that would be literally, it would be like, what if you're out, working the field and plowing, it would be boom, that bell rings and you stop, everything drops and it's just boom, and that's just a reminder of like our whole life is meant to be bent towards the liturgy.
Yeah.
I like the Angelus a lot. Yeah. I only pray it at noon, and
that's me too. Yeah. But it's meant to be prayed like
6 a.m. noon and 6 p.m. Yeah. But I like it a lot because it's a daily reminder for me of Mary's yes to the angel's message. Yep. So in the middle of the day, for me, I pray the Angelus and it reminds me, like, say yes.
It's this compass. Yeah. It really is like a daily compass of like, where's true north, right? Like it's and not that quick is like, I say that as like it's quick. Right, as it's coming out of my mouth, but it is like, it's short, but it really does a really good job of just like, okay, what am I doing all this for? Like, is my mind still focused on, is this for my family? Is this for my wife? Is this to bring greater glory to you, God, and to hopefully make my what I can control in terms of the community that I'm in holier? And if it's not, then reveal that and help me to figure out how to move forward through it,
Yep.
Another break? Let's take a break.
Throw a log in the fire.
or maybe some tobacco in the pipe.
Hello, friends. I want to tell you a little bit about our First Fruits movement. What we do first in everything matters. It sets the trajectory of whatever action we take. In Leviticus, God tells Moses to share with the Israelites that they must bring forth the first fruits of their livestock, of their produce, and of their drink. The fulfillment of this is found in Jesus himself. He is the firstborn of the Father. He is the first man to conquer death. He is the first to ascend into heaven. Before Jesus' ministry, he would run to Mary for guidance and counsel. So why would I not do the same? What can you do to participate? Commit to praying the Rosary daily, invite other men and women to join you, and share the movement with your friends on social media and other communication platforms. What can you do to support us here at Circa Ignem and First Fruits? First, pray for us and our mission daily, and second, buy our hats and future merch at circaignem.com. That's CIRCAIGNEM.com. Thank you.
All right. What's our mission? Our mission is to be ordinarily radical in daily practice of our faith. which means that no matter what vocation we're in, it goes back to live without anything of one's own. To continue to divest ourselves of our selfishness, our own desires, and to truly live authentically as a reflection of Christ, which is ultimately what ends on the crucifix. Rick? Thoughts? Concerns? Pushback?
No pushback. No, I think it's great. I think it's a good call to action and a challenge, like I mentioned earlier, especially in our American life, because probably seemingly impossible to carry this out to like its furthest iteration of completely owning nothing. But I think that there's ways that we can try to at least embrace the spirit of it. And like I mentioned, just letting what you have be enough, and trying to minimize the amount of wants and only focus on the needs. And that's a hard thing to do, especially, we're all, I don't know if I want to say middle to upper class, but we do okay, we do all right. So we definitely enjoy the finer things in life as we sit here and puff our pipe tobacco and drink our craft beer, It's but it's a good reminder of the spirituality of like we mentioned, trust, allowing God to provide, really taking to heart what we mentioned about the Our Father, like give us this day our daily bread, and that trust in knowing that that He will provide, and not worrying about it, like not stressing about it, not being stupid about it either, but just, Lord, if this is where you have put me, then I'm going to do what you've called me to do, whether that is, like in our case here, to be a father, to be a husband, to be the leader of our domestic church. If you're out there listening to this and you're a single guy, what that looks like for you. If you're if you have a vocation or you're in the religious life, what that looks like for you. But each of us in our small corner of the world, trying to find ways that we can let go of the world and the material things, and focus on our Lord and what He did for us. And I thought a lot about, like, during this episode, as you were talking a lot, I kept going back to the Lenten mission, where Father Jacob talked a lot about the offertory, and how we all have to have something to bring, something to offer. And even if you feel like you got nothing and you're just broken, like that in and of itself is an offering.
That's like the most beautiful.
Yeah.
Because that's where Christ wants us.
Yeah.
Right? Not in terms of being broken, but like we have nothing else.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like that's where He becomes more present, right? Is it's like, this is all I got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a do-rag. That's all you got.
Really?
Manny, you owe me $5.
That has nothing to do with the offertory.
Right now it doesn't. Yeah. But somewhere, someplace,
down the line,
man.
Someone had to offer a
TBD.
No, that was an inside joke. I'm sorry.
To be revealed at a later time.
Love inside jokes. Love to be a part of one someday.
Oh, that's a great Office.
Oh man,
Office reference.
But in all seriousness, though, it's just it really, I think that at the heart of this whole Sine Propio thing, which I think it's a great topic, and it was a great, revelation or what have you that you had to talk about this. But it just goes back down to trust. It really does. Like for me, it's just trust. It's like trusting in our Lord and having faith that He is enough, and let Him be enough. I had this in prayer before Mass a couple months ago, maybe even. You know how it is, songwriters. We'll just have this like random,
and it floats for a while,
and we're just like, oh, that'd be a great song. But I was staring at Jesus on the cross and the crucifix, and I just had this thought of like He was, like I was wrestling with all these things, and just trying so hard to like trying so hard to like, man, if I could only kick this habit, or if I can only do this, and it's like, and I just felt like God was on the cross, just saying like, just let me love you. Like that's it. Like if you would just allow me to love you, and that's like it all goes back just to that trust of like just knowing that He is enough. Sine Propio.
Manny?
I had thoughts, but Rick's were so beautiful that I forgot mine. I love
He spun you out with the do-rag.
Oh gosh, you guys are too much. No, I love the mission, and the part that stuck out to me, or the word that stuck out to me, is ordinary. And going back to something Rick said earlier was how going against, or no, actually maybe you said it, Eli. The Christian life is different than the cultural life that exists right now. And if you break it down, it's very ordinary.
It is.
Which is weird. Yeah. So being ordinary is the weird. It's the outlier. It's the crazy one. So that's what stuck out to me the most, is not complicated too much. Live an ordinary life. You know, everything that Rick said about, you know, not having what you have is enough, and trusting God and all that good stuff, and just trust in God and be ordinary. Dare to be ordinary.
Let the ordinary be extraordinary.
Oh.
Well, not like that.
You're on a roll, Rick.
No, and that's really what it really. I mean, the catalyst behind all of this, right, is forgetting and not totally, again, not putting our heads in the sand of what's going on at a greater level globally or nationally, but more importantly, focusing on this God has called me to this time and place right now. I can't change, right? We can't collectively change, like, greater than the Clovis area of what's going on. But if we do that ordinarily, and we do that radically, and focus on what are you calling me to do here and now, Lord, within this community, He will honor that, right? He will, to your point, Rick, it is abundantly enough, not just enough. He will take the simple gift and offering sometimes of the mess that's in my heart is all I got to offer right now, Lord. And He's going to go, cool, I'll take it.
Yeah.
You know, and that really that's the mission, right? Is not getting spun out on the super peripheral things that we can't control at a national level. It's going, my family, my domestic church is what's going to change this world, right? And maybe not 2 generations or 4 generations, but maybe so, right? But it's on me to know, Lord, I need to completely and utterly pour out myself, suffer the very tiniest sliver with you on the road to the cross, and in that my kids see the courage, the love, all of what the church teaches and what Christ teaches, and the beauty of what it is and what it emulates. And then they take that and they start changing their own respective provinces, right, where they're called to be planted. Closing. Christ in the institution of the Eucharist and at every Mass, the priest in persona Christi says, "Take this, all of you, and eat of it, for this is my body, which will be given up for you. Take this, all of you, and drink from it. For this is the chalice of my blood, the blood of the new and eternal covenant, which will be poured out for you and for many. Poured out. It's not a metaphor. Christ poured, is pouring, and will continue to pour himself out completely for us. We are called to do the same. Let's look at the cross, look at the cross, look at the crucifix, and that's ultimately what we should be doing throughout our life, and hopefully by the end of our life, that is what's recognized and not us.